I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary that any right-minded thinking parent should believe that it was...
For years, royal watchers have speculated, whispered, and searched for answers hidden behind carefully rehearsed smiles and polished family photos. But now, the silence is finally broken. Carole Middleton and her daughter, Princess Kate, have stepped out of the shadows to reveal a truth they say they can no longer hide. It's the kind of confession that shakes the palace walls, raising questions about everything we thought we knew. But why now? What's really been going on behind closed doors? Get ready, because this bombshell could change everything. How Carole Middleton quietly shaped the future of the monarchy. The story didn't begin with tiaras or palace gates. It began in a quiet village in Berkshire, where Carole Middleton was teaching her children not how to curtsy or wave from balconies, but how to work hard, stay kind, and never lose their sense of self. Long before the cameras arrived and royal titles were added to their names, the Middletons were just another family trying to build something meaningful from the ground up. Yet what many failed to notice was that their ordinary life was laying the foundation for something extraordinary. For years, royal insiders viewed the Middletons as outsiders, pleasant, polite, but ultimately common. They didn't come from aristocratic bloodlines, held no historic estates, and certainly weren't fixtures in elite social circles. But what they lacked in noble heritage, they made up for in quiet resilience. Carole and her husband, Michael, built their business from scratch, instilling in their children values that didn't come from luxury, but from lived experience, resilience, humility, and quiet strength. These weren't the lessons of royalty. These were the lessons of life. And they were exactly what the monarchy didn't know it needed. As Kate Middleton stepped onto the royal stage, the world focused on her poise, her grace, her effortless ability to embody tradition without losing her warmth. But behind that composed figure was the steady presence of her mother. Carole wasn't a background figure. She was a quiet force, always one step behind, ready with comfort, strength, or silence, whichever her daughter needed most. While royal protocol kept palace officials at arm's length, it was Carole who stayed close through it all. During Kate's pregnancies, especially when she suffered from hyperemesis gravidarum, a condition that left her severely ill and weakened, it wasn't palace aides or royal physicians who became her rock. It was Carole. When the world's press circled like hawks and royal traditions demanded silence, Carole offered something more meaningful: protection. She didn't need headlines to prove her worth. Her power came from her presence. This quiet support didn't go unnoticed by those who mattered most. Queen Elizabeth, known for her sharp intuition and measured judgments, recognized something rare in Kate, and by extension, in the family she came from. The Queen understood that the future of the monarchy couldn't rely solely on bloodlines and centuries-old rituals. It needed real people, grounded values, and a link to the world beyond the palace gates. Even Kate's siblings, Pippa and James, carried the same quiet confidence. They never courted fame, but they moved through the public eye with the same calm strength, shaped by the same home. Their grace came not from titles, but from a kind of character that's harder to teach and impossible to fake. The Middletons never asked to be royal. They didn't scheme or push. Their influence grew in the shadows, not through power plays, but through consistency, dignity, and unwavering family bonds. Carole, in particular, became the invisible scaffolding behind one of the most watched women in the world. And as Kate takes on greater royal responsibilities in the years ahead, it becomes clearer than ever. The Middletons are no longer on the outside looking in. They are part of the monarchy's future, not because of a crown, but because of the values they carried with them from that modest home in Berkshire. In a world where tradition often overshadows change, it was a mother's love, patience, and quiet strength that helped modernize a royal story centuries in the making. As the Middleton influence subtly reshaped royal norms, Catherine wasn't just joining history, she was quietly rewriting it. Stay with us. Catherine's quiet rise, the strength behind the smile, and with that unshakable grace passed down from her mother, Catherine began a journey not of grandeur, but of quiet evolution. At first glance, her royal entrance looked like something from a picture book. A young woman stepping confidently into the spotlight with a calm smile and polished charm. But beneath the surface, Catherine, Princess of Wales, was navigating far more than what the cameras ever revealed. Her path wasn't carved by privilege, it was forged through grit, patience, and emotional intelligence that even centuries of royal protocol couldn't teach. Born in 1982 in the heart of Berkshire, Kate grew up in a household where love, routine, and resilience shaped the rhythm of everyday life. She didn't dream of crowns. She played sports, studied hard, and helped with her family's small business. When she met Prince William at the University of St. Andrews in 2001, she wasn't dazzled by his title. What sparked was a quiet bond, real and human, nurtured in study halls and shared jokes, not royal palaces or grand affairs. But the moment their relationship became public, the fairy tale lens took over, and with it came years of media frenzy. While tabloids dubbed her Waity Katie, mocking her silence, she was never truly waiting. She was watching, learning, preparing herself not just for marriage, but for the institution she was slowly walking into. No royal aide trained her to survive press invasions or whispered palace politics. She taught herself, step by careful step. By the time Prince William proposed in Kenya in 2010, she had already become a master of restraint. She didn't just accept the ring, she accepted a life of duty that offered little privacy and endless judgment. And still, she chose to walk forward. The trials that followed were often hidden from public view. Each of her 3 pregnancies was marred by hyperemesis gravidarum, a condition so severe it left her hospitalized and depleted. Yet somehow, she managed to appear on the hospital steps just days after delivery, smiling gently, cradling the future of the monarchy in her arms. Those moments weren't simply ceremonial, they were statements of resolve. And through it all, William remained steady beside her, not loud, but present. Their strength came not from grand gestures, but from a shared rhythm, a kind of unspoken support system shaped by trust rather than spectacle. Still, perhaps the greatest test of her composure came not from external critics, but from within the family itself. Her once close bond with Prince Harry and the promising unity of the so-called Fab Four gave the monarchy a fresh, modern face. But as tensions grew and Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal life in 2020, the dream of unity unraveled. As public narratives spun out of control, Kate didn't defend with words. She responded with constancy. She simply showed up. For the crown, for the country, for the future. Even Queen Elizabeth II, who rarely offered overt praise, is said to have admired Kate's quiet strength, the kind that doesn't seek the spotlight, but stands unshaken when it finds her. That respect wasn't handed out lightly. It had to be earned. Catherine never raced toward the throne. She moved through each challenge with quiet assurance, building something far more enduring than popularity: trust. And in doing so, she has become not just the Princess of Wales, but the monarchy's silent anchor, the unexpected force guiding its next chapter with grace, purpose, and a quiet power all her own. The letter that shifted the crown. She had long stood in quiet strength, navigating the harsh spotlight with a calm resolve. But what happened at Balmoral that autumn proved Kate Middleton was no longer simply adapting to the crown. She was becoming its compass, The family had arrived at the Scottish estate expecting routine, tradition, polite conversation, and muted nods to the past. Balmoral had always held the weight of history, where royal rituals were repeated, not rewritten. But this time, something felt different the moment Catherine stepped into the room, holding a letter with Queen Elizabeth II's unmistakable script. No royal announcement had prepared them for what came next. No throne room, no camera, no fanfare. Just a quiet reading that would echo louder than any coronation bell. Kate's voice didn't shake as she began to read. The words, carefully chosen and handwritten by the late Queen before her passing in 2022, weren't sentimental. They were precise. The letter didn't just offer parting wisdom. It redirected the future. In it, Elizabeth made clear not only her affection for Kate, but her deep trust. Not in a formal procedural way, but something personal, enduring, and quietly revolutionary. Every person in the room felt the shift. King Charles avoided her eyes. Camilla, the crowned queen consort, sat still, her posture tight. Anne's glance toward Edward said more than words could. No one interrupted, because there was nothing to say. This wasn't merely about inheritance, it was about intent. What followed wasn't just reflection, but revelation. In the days after the letter was read, staff uncovered a collection of private notes written by the Queen over the years, all addressed to Kate. Some were composed before major royal events, others during Kate's pregnancies or public struggles. Each message offered more than comfort. They offered instruction, warning, and clarity. Elizabeth had spent years preparing her, not just as a wife to a future king, but as a woman standing fully in her own right. These weren't official decrees. They were private endorsements, etched with clarity and quiet conviction. They spoke of leadership shaped by grace, of a strength that didn't need to shout to be seen. Camilla may have worn the crown, but what Queen Elizabeth passed to Kate couldn't be seen. It was deeper. Trust, vision, legacy. Then Princess Anne, never one for drama, stepped forward with a final message she'd been asked to deliver. It wasn't just ceremonial, it was decisive. The Queen hadn't just prepared Kate to guide the monarchy. She'd chosen her to redefine it. And as the meaning of those words settled like mist through the room, something behind palace doors began to shift. What came next left even the firm reeling. Don't blink. The quiet shift in power. Camilla had arrived at Balmoral wearing elegance like armor. Her chin raised, her steps measured, her presence unmistakably regal. She had spent years earning her place beside King Charles, navigating relentless judgment, and finally emerging as queen consort. The cameras followed her every move now, her name etched into the present-day image of the monarchy. But on that particular day, surrounded by familiar faces and ancestral walls, her confidence started to waver. It wasn't a speech that changed things. It was a glance. Princess Anne clearing her throat gently before revealing a memory she'd carried close for years. The late Queen, in one of their final private conversations, had spoken plainly. The monarchy's survival would depend not on lineage alone, but on connection, and no one embodied that better than Kate. Not with noise or spectacle, but with quiet, unwavering grace. In truth, the signs had been there for years. While Camilla stood beneath the spotlight, Kate worked steadily in the background, reshaping what it meant to be royal. She embraced issues others had avoided: maternal health, early childhood development, and mental well-being. She didn't command attention, she earned it, little by little, with sincerity and warmth. Her strength came not from tradition, but from trust. Within palace walls, many had watched the transformation unfold. Queen Elizabeth had begun passing her most symbolic possessions to Kate. Not with fanfare, but with intent. Historic brooches, treasured necklaces, heirlooms, heavy with meaning. They were never simply jewelry. In the royal world, such gestures spoke volumes, and Camilla, always attuned to nuance, noticed. The public noticed too. They began to see Kate as something more than a future queen. She was becoming a figure of her own, one who could blend old-world dignity with the modern pulse of the people. She hugged children without hesitation, laughed easily during visits, and stood steady under scrutiny. Where Camilla embodied the past's polished tradition, Kate reflected a future built on authenticity. Camilla held her role with poise, never outwardly rattled, but there was a silence in her eyes now, a pause in her smile, an unspoken understanding that her reign, though real, might not be the monarchy's final answer. The Queen had chosen with intention. Kate had not been placed behind William merely to support. She was meant to lead beside him. In the end, it wasn't about replacing one woman with another. It was about evolving an institution, and that evolution had already begun, long before the final letter was ever read aloud. But what secret struggle did Camilla face before wearing the crown? Stay tuned to uncover everything. The weight of a crown. Earned, not inherited. Though the monarchy appeared steady on the outside, beneath the polished surfaces of palaces and portraits, silent storms had long been brewing. Camilla's crown, though placed gently on her head, had never truly rested without friction. The journey began long before titles were exchanged or vows were spoken. For Camilla, the challenge was never simply about becoming queen consort. It was about rewriting a story the public had already finished. To many, she was the woman who stepped into Diana's place, not through tragedy alone, but through scandal. The media made sure of that, day after day. Headlines painted her as the interloper, the woman who shattered a fairy tale. Inside the royal household, her reception was just as cold. Queen Elizabeth II, though renowned for her diplomacy, made her discomfort known without saying much. She kept her distance, refusing public acknowledgement, skipping key events, and declining to attend Charles and Camilla's civil ceremony in 2005. Even in official photographs from the wedding, the Queen and Prince Philip stood at a remove. Smiles were measured. The mood, more stiff than celebratory. Princess Anne, Charles's sister, made no effort to hide her disapproval. Her stern expression, her refusal to engage with Camilla that day, it was enough to say everything without a single word. And yet, Camilla didn't retreat. She moved slowly, deliberately, stepping deeper into royal life without demanding space. Her strategy wasn't flashy. It was quiet endurance. She supported Charles tirelessly, fulfilled her duties with care, and kept her presence soft, yet consistent. Over the years, those closest to the crown began to notice. Not a replacement, but a partner. Charles, for his part, played the long game. He worked gently to reshape public perception. One interview, one photograph, one carefully staged appearance at a time. His efforts bore fruit in February 2022, when the Queen, after years of cautious tolerance, finally gave her blessing, publicly stating her sincere wish for Camilla to become queen consort upon Charles's ascension. Still, that royal seal did not erase memory. Diana's legacy remained vivid in British hearts. Many felt the crown on Camilla's head was earned through persistence, not affection. Even after the Queen's passing in September 2022, and Charles's formal rise to the throne, not everyone accepted the shift. Some saw progress, others saw betrayal, and inside palace walls, old tensions remained. Though Camilla and Princess Anne were cordial in public, insiders say their bond never grew. Anne, ever the traditionalist, found Camilla too relaxed, too unstructured. She valued rules, routine, and a sense of sacred duty, traits Camilla seemed less bound to. The difference in temperament made their relationship difficult. Camilla tried, carefully avoiding confrontation, choosing instead to show her worth through quiet diligence. But even after the coronation in May 2023, even with the weight of the crown finally her own, she could sense that her role remained under silent review. The public, and some within the family, still watched her not as a beloved figure, but as someone whose place had been tolerated, never truly celebrated. Yet she kept going. Day by day, she fulfilled her duties, supporting Charles and shaping her position without noise or drama. Whether her legacy will ever be free of controversy remains to be seen. But if nothing else, her story is not one of privilege. It's one of perseverance. In a world that rarely forgets and forgives even less, Camilla carved out her place not by demanding the crown, but by surviving everything it demanded of her. Despite years of gradual acceptance, Camilla's position remained uncertain, especially as Kate quietly outshined her in ways she never could. Stay with us to see how it all unfolded. A crown overshadowed. Kate Middleton's arrival brought a fresh energy into the royal household, and with it, a wave of adoration that seemed effortless. She carried herself with calm grace and an unshakable poise that instantly captivated the public. Her smile, her composure, her every gesture was met with approval, and for Camilla, that stark contrast was difficult to ignore. It wasn't just the crowds or the constant media praise that hurt. It was the memory of how differently her own journey had unfolded. While Camilla had climbed a steep, often lonely path to acceptance, Kate appeared to glide into royal life as if born to it. And it wasn't just public perception. Even within the palace walls, whispers began to surface that Kate embodied everything a modern queen should be. Each shared appearance with Kate seemed to sharpen the divide. Cameras turned toward Kate, applause followed her entrance, and attention never drifted. Camilla, standing mere steps away, often felt like a shadow at her side. Though she smiled and performed her duties with discipline, something inside her ached. The silent comparisons, the subtle dismissals, they carved deep. Camilla had always hoped that time would erase old wounds, but as Kate's popularity soared, the spotlight seemed to move further away from her. It didn't help that Kate never showed any hint of rivalry. Her quiet focus, her commitment to William, and her flawless public image made her even more endearing to the people. Camilla, by contrast, had always felt she had to earn every inch of ground she stood on. Privately, these feelings began to weigh heavily on Camilla's shoulders. She started making bolder choices behind the scenes, taking firmer control of royal duties and traditions in a bid to assert her place. But each effort was often drowned out by the growing admiration for the Duchess of Cambridge, soon to be Princess of Wales, and eventually Queen Consort herself. As age crept in, Camilla became more aware of the years she couldn't reclaim. She saw in Kate a youthful glow that reminded her of everything she had missed, of Diana's memory, of a world that had once rejected her, and of the lingering fear that history would never let her forget. Even her hopes for her children's place in royal society became tangled with her need for lasting recognition. Though she wore the crown at Charles's side, the haunting truth lingered. Love and loyalty from the people seemed to flow elsewhere, and that quiet heartbreak followed her like a shadow, long after the applause had faded. Kate's quiet rise and the crown's changing face. Yet just as Camilla wrestled with the sting of public comparison, something deeper had already begun to stir behind palace doors, something that would forever change the monarchy's path. There were no proclamations, no grand announcements. Instead, the shift began with the discovery of a few handwritten letters, deliberate and quietly powerful, authored by none other than Queen Elizabeth II. These weren't simply affectionate words passed between family members. They were a signal, a plan, a legacy folded into ink, quietly naming Catherine, Princess of Wales, as the heartbeat of a future the Queen had long been preparing for. While King Charles stood as the rightful monarch, these letters introduced a new tension. They hinted not at replacement, but at redefinition. They didn't challenge his authority, but rather pointed to someone else as the future's foundation. And that person wasn't the woman crowned beside him. It was the woman walking 2 steps behind his son. Kate, once seen as a dutiful wife, now carried the weight of something far greater. She was no longer just fulfilling her royal role. She was embodying the monarchy's next chapter. Through every quiet interaction, every careful decision, Kate had been preparing, not for a spotlight, but for something much more enduring. Unlike Camilla, who had to fight for years to be accepted, Kate's grace seemed effortless. But that effortlessness came from years of quiet discipline, thoughtful guidance, especially from her mother, Carole Middleton, and a sense of purpose that had been nurtured behind the scenes. This wasn't about fame or attention. It was about trust. It was about legacy. Now, subtle signs of that trust were everywhere. The Queen's private visits with Kate, a rare conversation at Balmoral, Carole's whispered recollections of a monarch who saw something enduring in her daughter-in-law. A strength that was soft, but unshakable. A calm that didn't silence rooms, but anchored them. Even as Camilla remained present, something had changed. The people, once skeptical of Kate's quiet nature, now viewed it as a kind of steady strength the monarchy had long needed. And while traditions held their place, it became clear that the crown was no longer just passed by bloodline. It was also earned through grace, restraint, and quiet leadership. The monarchy was evolving. And at the center of this gentle transformation stood a woman who didn't force change, but embodied it. But what do you think Queen Elizabeth's secret letters truly meant? Was she quietly naming Kate as the monarchy's future all along? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.